Hi everyone. As you can see, I moved into my new house, and instead of finishing unpacking, I decided I'm going to make a video on a few things that you should do while you're in college. Now, college is an excellent opportunity to get certain things that you need to do in life out of the way. Now, these are not only just things that you should do in general in life, but also things that you may need to do or want to do in order to get a good job. Okay, let's start with number one. Okay, so number one is going to be to get a credit card. Now, I know that credit cards, you can get into debt and you can end up on a treadmill with that debt. A lot of us have been scared away from credit cards, as I was when I was in grade school. I had teachers tell me that it is the new form of slavery, which it certainly can be if you don't use them correctly. However, there are a few reasons that you want to get a credit card. Number one, I just moved into a house now. I've been working, in a full-time job for almost 2 years. Now, the only way I was able to make that happen started with me getting a credit card in college. The reasoning behind that is I went to get a car loan after that because I needed a better car. When I started my full-time job, I was able to get a decent interest rate on that because I had good credit at that point because I'd been using the credit card. And after I did that, I was able to buy this house because I had an even better credit score after all of that. So it can help you with some of these things that you may want further in life. Beyond that, the company that hires you is actually probably going to look at your credit score, and not just the company. There are other things, like if you need to get some kind of security clearance, then they're also going to look at your credit score. A lot of people look at your credit score, and if you haven't had any credit cards or any debt, it's just going to say that you have nothing for your credit score. Now, this isn't as bad as it could be. It's not as bad as bad credit, but it's not nearly as good as having good credit. So you're going to want to get a credit card, and here's what you do. I would download an app called Intuit Mint. Now, what this does is it links with your bank accounts, your credit cards, any kind of thing that you have financially, including loans and things like that, and it will track those things for you. Now, why this is important is you want to be able to compare your credit card balance and your bank account balance. So why are we doing this? Well, you never ever want to spend more money on your credit card than you have in your bank account. So the reason I'm saying this is to avoid that debt trap. You are always going to make on-time payments. So what you do is get Intuit Mint. It's actually going to look at things like your credit score and tell you what credit cards you can get, basically, or that you're likely to qualify for. Now, you're going to want to find one that doesn't have an annual payment while you're in college. You're not at the point yet where you want to deal with that kind of thing. Yes, you can get more points with one that has an annual fee, but I would not start with something like that. Get one that has no annual fee. The other thing you want to look for is what can you get points for? And that's because another benefit to having a credit card is you're actually going to save money with it. When you use a debit card, you just spend the money and that goes towards the thing you want. With a credit card, depending on what you have, different things will earn you what's called points, and those can be applied to certain things. Now, yeah, you can go into one of their deals and get a free, iron from it or something if you want. But what I prefer to do is just take the cash back method. And actually what I do now is my first credit card was an Amazon Prime credit card. So I had Amazon Prime, so that helped me qualify for it. And now any points I get can be spent directly on Amazon. They translate to cash. So anytime I put a large purchase or just over a long period of time, small purchases, I can actually get stuff free on Amazon. Anything I want, I can apply those points towards. So I actually sort of get free stuff out of it. Now, once you have all of that done, you have the credit card, you've linked it to Mint, just watch your Mint account and watch it closely. It's not always been 100% perfect. You may also want to check the actual bank account and the actual credit card statement at first to make sure it's staying accurate. And you're never going to spend more on your credit card than you have in your bank account. And by doing this, you're building your credit and you're also earning those points. And so you're actually saving money in a way, and you're building the credit score, which is the most important reason that you're doing this. Now, if you do this for long enough, your credit score will get pretty high, especially if you're not missing, payments or anything like that. And when you go to apply for a job, it will show that you have good credit, which will be a little bit of a boost to you as you get through. And Also, anything else you do, whether it be you need to get a new car, you want to go for a house one day, you're now starting the process of building your credit to where you can do that more easily. So the next thing you need to do is build your resume. Now, I've said this before, so I'm not going to go too far into it, but when you go to apply for a real job, you're going to need a resume. Almost everyone is going to require a resume, regardless of LinkedIn existing. You're going to need it. So this can be hard to do at first because you may not have much to put on your resume and you may have no idea how to start. So what I recommend first is find a template, something that you think looks good, something that works in Microsoft Word or some similar software, and then go ahead and put in what you can. Put in your university degree as though you already have it, but set your graduation date to when you expect to graduate. Companies will know what this means. Beyond that, fill in what you can and have a section either for personal projects or skills, or I actually recommend both. Now, if you don't have any personal projects, obviously you won't be able to have this section. But skills, hopefully you have some even early on in college, even if those skills are simple, like Microsoft Word, stuff like that. If you can do it, if you have done it, put it down. There's a lot of people that ask, well, when is a skill, when am I good enough at something to actually put it on my resume? Well, I tend to say if you've done something with it, put it there, even if you're not great at it. For a few reasons. One, you tend to underestimate how good you are at something, especially when you haven't done it a lot. So you kind of just I would judge in the other direction against, your own intuition. A lot of people put stuff on their resumes not being as good as you probably are. So beyond that, if you are called to an interview for it, you will have time to sharpen that skill, and you're also going to be asked what you've done with it. In which case you can just tell them what you've done with it. You're not being dishonest with them, you're telling them exactly what you've done and allow them to decide if that's enough. And beyond that, if you need to demonstrate during the interview, just do your best, and having told them what you've done, they shouldn't be surprised at your skill level. Okay, so beyond all these things, after you make your rough draft of a resume, I recommend most universities have a career guidance building office or something like that. So seek that out and see if they offer resume services. They probably do. Now, one of the reasons you want to do this is because you're paying for it, okay? That's paid for by your tuition. And if you don't take advantage of it, then you're just wasting your money. So even if you think you're good with your resume, I recommend running it by one of these people. So go ahead, go in, see what they say. They may have some good advice. They might even have better ways that you can format things. They might ask you about what you've done and help you think of things that should go on there that maybe you didn't think of yourself. But by the end of it, you want to have something for a resume, something that you can give potential employers, whether that be for internships or a full-time job. Okay, so the next one might be one that surprises you, and this is a bit of my opinion, but I think it's a good idea. May not apply to some of you. So number 3 is learn to drive and get a car. So many of you are probably already doing this, in which case, congratulations, you already passed this step. But I met a lot of people when I was in university that didn't have a car, and some that didn't even have a license. Now, the reason this is important is because to get a job, it's very, good likelihood that you're gonna wanna move to do that. It's a lot easier to find a good job or one that suits you if you're willing to move to work there. So a lot of areas, I'd almost even say most, are going to require you to drive. And trust me, you're not gonna be able to just Uber there every day long term. That's just too expensive in most cases. So most jobs, you're not going to be able to find a place to live that's within walking or biking distance. Maybe biking, but you're not really going to want to do it long term. Plus, as far as getting to things like interviews and all that, or if you're going to fly for an interview, you're going to need to get to the airport at a certain time. You're probably going to want to be able to drive. That way you can just ensure that you always make it. If you tell an employer that, oh, well, I missed my ride or I couldn't get an Uber, something like that, that's not gonna look good to them. And they're going to kind of assume that you're gonna have the same kind of problems if they were to hire you. So this may not be the easiest thing to do while you're in college or at any time for that matter, because to get a car, you know, I would get the crappiest car you can that's still reliable. This isn't your forever car. Now, I can give you like a few tips. Like if the paint's peeling, fine, right? If the tires are falling off, the wheels are falling off, probably not what you want to go for. So my best recommendation is I'm not personally much of a car guy, although I know my way around a car, but you can probably find somebody in one of your friend groups that is into cars. And these guys or girls tend to like helping people out with cars because they just love cars. A lot of them might go to look at a used car with you for free just because they like doing it. They like seeing a car and feeling it out and judging it. My brother is that way for sure. And there are lots of people I've met that are into cars. So if you're not that good with car stuff, try to enlist someone's help. Now, if you don't have a license, learning might be a little bit more difficult because in most states you're required to have a licensed driver that's, I think, sometimes over 21 with you in order to do that. Now, there are people in college that are over 21, and beyond that, if not all states require the over 21 thing. So you may need to find people to allow you to drive for them. You might actually want to see if you can do this before you get the car. And I actually did this for someone that I went to university with that she was trying to learn how to drive. My car was fairly beat up. I wasn't too worried about her wrecking it because it wouldn't have been that huge of a loss as far as financially anyway. So I would let her drive. I would be her, you know, passenger to watch and all that. I was over 21 and she learned a little bit, right? And eventually, you know, she also did it with her parents and stuff, which is something you can do if you live close enough to them or just on holidays, you know, whenever you can, and eventually get your license. Now, this one is not as easy to do while you're in college, but it's still pretty important because if you get out of college and you don't have a method of transportation, you may have problems with your full-time job. Okay, so this next one is a little bit more vague, but it's learn how to live, right? Now, that's really vague, right? What does that even mean, learn how to live? Well, what I mean by that is when you live with your parents, and this may not be true for everyone, but a lot of us have a lot of things done for us, and we don't learn certain things. And college is perfectly set up for you to learn a lot of basic living skills that you might think you know how to live. Most people going into college think they do. But it turns out there's a lot of things that they don't know how to do without their parents. So I'll give you an example. When I first started going to college, I had a shared apartment, and there was, I had roommates basically. We shared a kitchen. Well, one night I walked out and there was water and bubbles all over the floor, and a very apologetic roommate because he had put dish soap in the dishwasher, which you can't do, and he learned it by doing it. He probably grew up in a house where either his parents did the dishes or he may have just always had dishwasher detergent laying around and always used that. He ran into a situation where he didn't, and he decided dish soap would work just as well. Turns out it doesn't. Now, I didn't get upset with him or anything because I had done the same thing when I first started living on my own. I didn't have any dishwasher detergent, said, dish soap should work just as well. It works for hand washing. Well, it doesn't work in the dishwasher. So this is just one example of things that you might learn. And here's how college is kind of perfectly set up for that. Usually when you start out at a university, you go to a dorm. Now, in a dorm, I don't think you normally would have a dishwasher or a lot of other more dangerous appliances. So there could be maybe a shared stove where there's a lot of people to kind of overwatch you one way or another, but you're probably not gonna have a stove in your dorm. Some dorms don't even allow for you to have microwaves. So they kind of disallow some of the more dangerous lessons that you could end up learning. Now, eventually in college, you're probably gonna, either you won't be allowed to stay in the dorms any longer, or you're going to crave something that is a little more and a little cheaper, because dorms don't give you much, yet they're very, very expensive. So what a lot of people end up doing is they get a few friends at that point, this is usually a couple years in, and they go to find either an apartment they can rent or a house they can rent. Now at that point, you're still playing on an easier mode than normal real life, right? Because yes, you do have these more dangerous appliances with less oversight, but you still have other people to help you when you don't know what to do or you make a mistake. You'll have people that are living with you to help you. And so that's kind of how you kind of gradually, do more and more difficult things and learn how to live, where eventually you're going to get a full-time job and you're going to go move to your own, either your own apartment, or maybe even you'll buy a house at some point like I just did. I did an apartment for 2 years. That's normal because you're going to get a job and then you're going to move somewhere that you're not familiar with, and you're probably not going to want to buy a house right off the bat, right? For several reasons. One, it takes a long time to buy a house, at least a month, and you're going to need somewhere to stay to start your job. Another reason is you need to work for that employer for a little while to figure out if you're happy there before you commit to something like a house, because a house is not something you can pick up and move. So try to do things when you're in college to help yourself learn these things. If you don't normally cook, you're going to want to cook one day. Try cooking. See where you make mistakes. Do it as early on as you can. And for stove cooking, that could be when you're in the dorm if you have a shared stove somewhere, or it could be when you're in the apartment. Different things that you like to eat, try cooking them. See if you make mistakes. And learn that way, because right now when you're in college, you have a little bit more of a safety net than if you are out on your own and you own a house and you mess something up, you could burn down the whole house and there's not really anyone to help you. Most of these college apartments, and especially dorms, have fire extinguishers around, so you probably won't burn down the entire dorm. So yeah, try to learn how to live. So this next one is get a job. Now, some of you may already have jobs, some of you may have worked jobs in high school. I always recommend in college to try to get a job that is at least adjacent to what you want to do. That way you can put it on a resume. And working at a movie theater, unless I guess you're, a theater degree or something, may not be the best thing. So try to get a job that is sort of related. Now, if you can't, then take what you can get, because something is better than nothing. Now, this should obviously be a part-time job if you're a full-time student, because you're not going to have time to do full-time. Trust me, it's just not going to work out. Now, a few reasons to get a job. One, to get into internships, having some kind of prior experience helps. Two, if you don't get an internship, your McDonald's job, believe it or not, looks a decent amount better than no job at all. It shows that you can show up on time and work. So yeah, you are going to want to have the job for a decent amount of time if you can, because if you were the type of person that didn't show up, things like that, you wouldn't have been able to keep the job for 2 years. So that at least shows employers that you're able to show up on time and be somewhat reliable. It also gives you the ability to learn the basics of working, which showing up on time, that's one of them, right? The ability to wake up in the morning on a regular schedule, or maybe not so regular, and be somewhere and be responsible for something. That's something, you may not have a lot of responsibility where you work, but just getting used to that is something that is helpful. Also, coworkers can be a good thing. That they're a good place to network, especially if you're living in a college town. So it's a good way to meet people, which is something that you also want to do in college. So get yourself some kind of job. Even if you can afford to not have one, I'd recommend that you do. Just go ahead and get a job so you can get a little bit of work experience. Okay, so the next one is a little bit more lighthearted, and that is make friends. And it's not just for your mental health, although that does come into play. I know these days that's harder to do because everything's remote, but that's not going to last forever. So making friends, other than just helping your mental health, can help you with networking, especially if they are doing the same degree as you. It can help you on your homework assignments and tests, studying for them, especially if they're in the same degree as you. Actually, they can't really help you study if they're in a different degree unless it's a closely related degree, basically. But my point is, having friends can help you get through the whole thing. It will keep your mental health up. It will, help you with your struggles, whether that be just them giving you advice on simple things in life, or them helping you with your assignments and maybe you exchanging information. I had a lot of friends that were in my degree program, and we would go in, look at the assignment, stuff like that. I would notice certain things, they would notice certain things, and the more we talked about it, the more we'd realize that we all didn't see the same things. Some of us missed certain things. There were a few things that maybe only 1 or 2 people noticed, but getting all that information out there helped us to have a more perfect picture of what we actually needed to do and made us more confident when it came to the tests. So yeah, make friends, it's worth it. Okay, so the final thing is to have a good time. Honestly, have a good time, and that's not, having a good time is probably not going to help you get a job, right? And it's probably not going to help you do better on tests. Now, I'm not saying go party and fail, right? I'm not trying to say that, but here's the thing. When you're in grade school, you have to deal with your parents, right? To some extent. Even if they're let the kid do what they want type, you're still living with them, and there's still a lot of things that you probably can't do because you don't really have your own place per se. Now, a dorm's not much of your own place, but it's more than your parents' house. So this is your first time in your life where you actually have choices and you get to kind of do what you want to, more or less. The thing is, when you get older and you get a full-time job, you still kind of have that, but you're going to be working 40 hours a week at least, and you're probably not going to have as much time to actually do some of the things that you want to as you do when you're in college. The other thing is, when you're in college, you have a great opportunity to do the things, have a good time, do the things you want with people that are most likely like you. They're going to be around the same age. You can find people that are like-minded to you, and you probably will if you look within your own degree program because you all made that same choice. So this is kind of a special time in your life where you really, in a way, have more freedom than you ever will. And yeah, it comes with a lot of times you don't have much money, but don't worry, if you hang out with certain people, you'll find ways to have just as much fun without having a ton of money. So have a good time in college. It's something that I recommend everyone does. Not to say that you can't have fun after college. I learned that. I thought it was going to be like, okay, Boringsville after this. Turned out to not be true at all. Although I will say, as far as where I live and stuff, I don't have a lot of people my age around. And that's true for kind of most places because, when you're in college, it's easy to think, oh, well, everybody is in their late teens, early 20s. Well, that's not true in most of the world. You're actually kind of a minority. So the demographics are quite a bit different, more spread out, basically, when you go to get a real job. Not a bad thing, but it makes it a little bit harder to find like-minded and younger people that are your age at that time to have fun with. Okay guys, that's my video on things I think you should do while you're in college. There's definitely more than just this, but I think this is a pretty good summary of a few things that, some of them are things that you may not think of that can come in handy for you. So if you like this video, please give it a like. Honestly, just smashing that like button helps me out more than you can imagine. I want to keep making videos like this, and it also shows me that you like this content or the particular subject I'm talking about, because I do talk about different subjects. If you really like this channel, please subscribe to it, or even if you just like it a little, it's not going to trouble you too much. And my videos will show up more for you when I put them out. So if you'd like to see this video, this type of video again, and you just want to see it show up in your feed on YouTube the next time that you open it up, if there's a new one, I would recommend subscribing. Okay guys, have a good night.